Good morning and welcome to OSW Daily, Open Source Workplace live stream with Steve Todd, founder of Open Source Workplace, and also our co-host, Mr. Mike Petruski. See, I almost went back to Petruski again. See, it's ingrained in my head, but it's
That's
Petruski.
okay. Just
It's
like
Petruski.
Melbourne or Melbourne, Australia. We pronounce
See,
Petruski. We're fine with it all. Good morning, Steve, and welcome to Open
welcome.
Sourced Workplace Daily.
How you doing, Matt? How's
I'm
it
Mike.
going?
We need to be more like broadcasters.
You
Good
think
morning
so?
and welcome to Good morning and welcome to OSW Daily. I'm Mike Petruski. You go.
There you go.
I'm
There you
Steve
go.
Todd. And we're
There
here
you
to
go.
tell
I
you
like it,
about
Mike.
workplace news.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, we are. No, I love it, Mike. I love it. So, full agenda today, but like, folks, thank you for joining us. If you find your way, you've accidentally come across this or something so bad in your life that you have to come to us and listen to us, you know. But
If this is the best thing going on in your life at 8 a.m. on a Tuesday
dare help
morning,
you, dare help you, dare
uh,
help you.
please
But
send us an email. We'll send you some better suggestions,
we should actually.
recommendations.
We should have people actually send us an email. Just please have sympathy with me. You know, I'm having to listen to you guys. That's how it goes, and
Right.
we send them a little something. So
That's
yeah,
great.
if you're in that boat, shoot us an email, and we'll see what we can do. So yeah, but look, all seriousness aside, thank you for joining us. I mean, as Mike mentioned, we're here to talk about what are actually the topics people are going to be talking about today in workplace, and sort of, you know, as we think about, you know, future work, returning to work, and all that related. That's where a lot of our content is sort of focused on, and you know, we're here obviously to share open source workplace content, but also content across all media formats. We're very agnostic. So if there's something that you've come across that you think is useful and you think we should be talking about, please do send it to oswdaily@gmail.com, and we'll look to include it in the future episode. But so Mike, lots to cover today. Again, lots
Yes,
of stuff going
Steve.
on. Siemens new remote work policy, really interesting. Some of the aspects there. Wall Street Journal article on getting rid of employee surveys. Really interesting. Facebook signs a monster lease in Manhattan. Really fascinating to see, get thoughts on that. And then COVID, reimagining the office. Let's get it right this time. Ooh, a little bit of a cliffhanger there, a little dangler. So let's see what that means. But yeah, Mike. So lots going on. So let's jump right in. Siemens, you know, they announced new work policies. Two things really that come out of here. This is officially announced by their CEO. Different leadership, one that focuses on outcomes. We spoke before about, you know, how we remember
Yes,
back
we
to
have.
Luke Camperman's video where he basically talked about, you know, we need to focus on outcomes, design workplaces for outcomes, design rules and processes to help us deliver better outcomes. And here's Siemens coming out, their CEO, and saying that's what, you know, as a message to their employees, that's what they're going to focus on. And the other piece that sort of resonated with me was that the last sentence there. The aim is to enable employees worldwide to work on a mobile basis for an average of 2 or 3 days a week, whenever reasonable and feasible. That's
There's your
sort
sweet
of
spot, Steve.
it's
That's your
it
sweet
is
spot.
I think it's not just my sweet spot. I think it's everybody's sweet spot. But in essence, it's more what's being said and what's not being said. It's sort of, you know, here is right change in leadership. We're going to focus on these things, and I think leadership is probably going to be a change in leadership style as well. But then, you know, the words that are used are really important here, and I like, you know, in a sense that whatever's reasonable and feasible, we're going to allow people to come into the office 2 to 3 days a week. It's not talking about remote, that we're going to allow you to work from home 2, 3, 4, 5 days a week. It's more about the importance of the office, and I think we're going to see that more and more come through, Mike, as organizations really try to shift the focus in what they think the future is, as they start to establish, okay, what does normal mean for us going forward? And I think we're going to see that as a narrative. But, you know, what are your initial thoughts as you read this?
Well, this article jumped out to me because of I think the headline grabbed my attention. Something about this two-sentence policy is a
Yeah.
masterclass in emotional intelligence or something like that. So he obviously hooked me on that because I love the idea of EQ, and
Yeah.
that's something we talk about on the Workplace Innovator podcast all the time, and the importance of having those human skills and the ability to live in this ever more automated world and fast changing technology type world. So So if an organization as big as Siemens, global entity, tens of thousands of employees is making a major shift, that's the other thing too that came to mind. And I have to ask some of my friends who I know that work for Siemens if this is something that is a big departure for them. It sounds like Siemens was one of those very old, staunch kind of, traditional companies where you come to the office, your management style is very much a traditional top-down management style. Most likely, I'm assuming some things here, but here this is a major departure for them because they've been forced to rethink and update their policy. And again, the two things you mentioned there that are important and were highlighted so well in the article are the idea of business outcomes being the measurement, not just I see you at your desk, you're working
Right.
X hours a day, therefore we can assume you're being productive, you're being a big contributor. No, it's about what you do in outcomes, and it's not. It could take one person an hour to complete a project. It could take someone else 8 hours. So which is the more productive employee? The other piece of this was flexibility. And this remote work now that we've been in has forced organizations, big companies like Siemens, to really say, all right, do we trust our employees? There are a lot of skeptical managers out there saying, there's no way my employees will do their work and be productive if I'm not there looking over their shoulder. And this experiment, the COVID quarantine work from home experiment, has opened a lot of eyes, I think, over these last 4 or 5 months that say, wow, there are certain employees that I can absolutely trust to work not only as hard as they did when they were coming to the office, but in many cases harder and becoming more productive. It's quite fascinating to see a big company like this put these policies out that kind of, puts it all into a nutshell like that.
Yeah, and I think this is probably one of the first large organizations who've actually been open, I guess. I mean, obviously we've had Twitter, we've had Facebook who've sort of put something forward, but in essence, this is probably the first who've come out and specifically said, with the glint on the workplace, the office has a future within our organization. It is going to be the bedrock if you think about what's actually been said. So 2 to 3 days, if it's feasible and reasonable. So they're basically putting the flag, I think, that the office is going to play a huge part in the Siemens future. But understanding the flexibility, to your point, is actually we understand employees want that flexibility. So we're going to build that into our workforce, our workplace, and it is going to be part of the organization going forward. So really, really, really interesting.
And trust is a huge part
Trust,
of that, obviously.
yes, no, thank you. Yeah, no, absolutely. So as we think about, what you take that trust element and sort of nicely weaves into the next article, and I'm just curious, Mike. This is obviously all about Wall Street Journal article, all about employee surveys. What's your, when someone says employee survey, what's initially does it comes to mind for you, and then we can dig into some of the things that are noted. Because you sent this to me, so I'm just curious.
Yeah, I always think that, certainly in current environments, there's been a lot of surveys going on asking people what their new work from home life is like. And I took a couple of them. I took the one from the Workplace Evolutionaries and one other, and just kind of was curious about how the questions were phrased and so forth.
Yeah.
But this article was speaking more to the broad idea of the annual employee survey, the mass, email or I don't know how it's done. I've never worked for a big company where I've been subjected to this. Maybe you could speak to it from experience.
Yeah, no,
but
I can do, yeah.
50 questions or whatever, and half the people just ignore it, don't take the survey and what have you. I think the point of the article is just a quick one that makes sense to me in these modern times, in these fast changing times. Things like the annual employee survey, trying to gauge engagement, morale and people's alignment with a company's mission and all those types of things. It's just inadequate. And just like the annual review is an antiquated concept. I've had several guests on my podcast say the idea of going in for an annual review with your manager, sitting down and talking about your goals and your past year and what have you, it just seems to be in today's world a dated and ineffective and inefficient way of doing things. Things are changing so fast. You've got to be in a as a manager and as an organization, better in touch with your employees and more in tune with the day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month activities and their level of connection to the mission and engagement. Don't you agree that's the kind of the way we need to be rethinking these things?
100%, 100%. And my experience has been, yeah, for many, many years, it was a annual survey, long annual survey that was basically put together, long questions. You answered, and then the results kind of disappeared. And sometime later down the road, you got there was a presentation where the executive team presented, or the head of HR presented the information.
Mm.
Maybe there were some follow-up questions, or conversations within teams on some of the responses, and that was typically it. There has been a trend, and I think it's probably a lot to do with the software development, the SaaS tools that are being put together for surveys, and therefore we're moving to more frequent, smaller surveys. Pulse
Okay.
surveys are kind of what they're typically called these days. For
Pulse
employee
surveys. I like
pulse, yeah.
take
So
take the
it's
pulse of the
yeah,
employees.
and it's every 3 to 4 months. Obviously, through COVID, there's been a lot more of these because obviously each organization wants to sort of get a better pulse. One, how employees doing, how are they feeling, where's their gaps, and how can
Mm.
the organization better support some of that information. Some of the employees with some of the responses. So that's typically how it's done. And what sort of struck me about this, there's a few data points. I'm just going to pull the slide back up, Mike, just so we could take a
Yeah.
look. There's a couple of
Cool.
data points. 60% of human resource executives admitted that their organizations either do nothing with the results or deal only with the easy issues.
Huh.
And
Interesting.
yeah, someone once told me way back when is only ask questions that you can actually fix or provide an answer to, because if something's too hard, then don't ask the question. But even
Right.
but you can take that as what you want. But in essence, it's kind of like change is hard. Fixing and finding problems is really hard for organizations. Whenever you think about the day job that everybody has, then you got to go and make these changes. And I think what typically happens is surveys are done. I think results matter to executives. I think the change that is required is like a huge ship, right? It's not just going to be one easy fix. It has to happen incrementally, and sometimes those incremental changes happen so slowly that you don't see it. You don't see that movement towards this, I don't want to say new normal, but whatever that adjustment path is, but you just don't feel that change. And I think
Sure.
executives do pay more attention maybe than what employees think. But I think I think they do happen, but again, we just have to be conscious of it. The other one I wanted to sort of note was 27% of middle managers never even look at the results of the annual surveys.
Yeah. That
That's
jumped out to
astounding.
me.
That's astounding. Now, whenever you think about, well, why is that? Is that because one, they don't have value, they don't take value, or they don't care? I don't know, but that's over a quarter
Or don't
of
have time.
managers.
It's one of those things where it's like, if I don't have the power to control, to
Yeah.
steer this ship, I'm not the one that's going to make the decisions. Why waste my time even looking at these
Right, but
things?
then the perception is, if your manager isn't the one who's actually looking at it and then going through it, then how does that incentivize the employees under that manager to then look at it? And this is 27% of managers. So what we don't know is how many people within the organization that 27% is influencing. So
Mm.
it's a huge aspect of it. So if we're not getting the participation, well, why is that? And one of the reasons may well be that managers are not looking at it. And obviously this goes through reasons to eliminate, but then it talks about reasons to change or different approaches. And I'm going to pull it back up again, just because there's a lot in here. And it talks about exit surveys, able to identify when people are onboarding, what's employee benefits they're selecting. I love the fact that it talks about the discussion groups of Slack, Yammer, trying to get the narrative. Yes,
Right.
employees may feel that they're being spied on or whatever, but it's not about that. It's getting sentiment, it's getting words. Natural language processing software can be also used, and the intent there is obviously to really understand what are the things the organization can do to better support the employees. This is not like spy software. It's not what the intent of what this is looking at. It's trying to get alternative viewpoints. And yes, I do think the annual survey is a challenge. I think there is a place for it because I think you can go deeper with some of the feedback. But I also think you got to do both. It's a bit like Peter Diamandis always says. When someone gives you an A or B, select both. And I think the more you can put these different contexts together, because I always then go back to what Christina Herrera says. Whenever you look at a data, qualitative and quantitative, you need to look at both sides of it. You need to
True.
take two aspects, because if you just take one view of it, then you maybe miss the sentiment behind it. And I think that's That's what's really important. I think the pulse surveys
Yeah.
is a great way to move forward with, but I think we do have to bring in some of these other tools. I
Yeah,
actually
get that
think,
complete picture.
yeah, and I actually think that, organizations may benefit or managers may benefit of having an upfront conversation about the survey before it's even issued. So you're actually having a conversation with people about the questions that are within surveys, not actually responding to the results. Because when people are responding to the results, usually it is, okay, we're doing this well, okay, that's fine, but why are we not doing well here? So therefore the employee probably feels a little bit defensive. Where actually if you have an open conversation within your group before anybody answers, you actually may get some really good insights into what sort of the employees are thinking. So that's just something I'd sort of throw out there as a suggestion for people.
Yeah, the big shocker for me, that last part, and you briefly mentioned it, is that the survey said, or this article said, 77% of companies do review emails, for signs of difficulty or
right, yeah.
and I was like, I guess I've always assumed my email is open to be reviewed by management of the organization, business email, business. But boy, I've always worked for smaller, mid-sized companies where there's a more informal setting, a more casual culture, whether it's on Slack or whether it's on email. I mean, I'm one to make some jokes on email and nothing inappropriate, of course, but if someone scans for Bitmojis and GIFs with Star Wars references, my email is going to really clog up the system. Sorry about that, boss.
That's too funny. It's not surprising, Mike, but it's too funny.
Yeah.
No, that's good.
What can I do?
I know. All you can be is yourself. So this news that came out this morning, or came out yesterday. Facebook signs a 730,000 square feet lease in Manhattan.
Yeah, I saw someone posted on LinkedIn about this.
Yeah. So that's staggering. Whenever you consider right the narrative that came out with Facebook, what they've been saying, the intent, the assumption is that they wouldn't be growing their real estate portfolio, that obviously they're moving, they're providing people with an opportunity to go work from home. And what are they going to do with all this real estate? They've taken, I believe it's over 1 million square feet in Hudson Yards. And then 2 blocks away, they've taken on this 700,000 square feet. Now, if you take how many people that is in a downtown city like New York City, wow. That's a lot, and I have to. I mean, I'm definitely going to speak to some of my broker friends, over the next couple of days to sort of see what does that mean for what they do, and obviously for an added stock price. I think went up 8% on the back of this news. So,
yeah,
it's a real material lease signing. Now, what we don't know is the clauses within there. Is this a conditional? Is there certain things that have to be met? We don't know. But
you seem really surprised by this. You really seem shocked.
Yeah, I am.
And I what does it tell you? It tells me that the office isn't dead. That even a company like Facebook, who was one of the first to come out and say working from home is a permanent option, flexibility, they know from what they're hearing and what they know about their employee base and about their business is that they need offices. They need real estate. They still need that long-term view of the workplace. And, COVID is a absolute difficult scenarios, game changer in many ways. But these companies making decisions on leases are thinking not months down the road, but years down the road. And we know we're going to get past this. We're going to get to a post-COVID world. And I believe that the workplace, that real estate will have a significant role in our existence. And I've had so many guests come on my show, not recently, because the longer this drags on, the more even the skeptics, are slow to make predictions, and even the bold ones are careful not to make too many predictions. And we're not making predictions here. I'm certainly not. But we do know things about human beings and human nature, and we know what works. We know what people want, what they need, and that really substantive change is hard for people. And when things get back to a normal where people are post-vaccine and comfortable and more comfortable, I should say, returning to public spaces, there's going to be a desire to get back. And that's where the next article, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but you talk about the opportunity we have as
Right.
workplace leaders to really reimagine the workplace and do it right.
Yeah, and I was just pulling up. I mean, I agree with everything you just said. I was just pulling up because I was curious to see. I know they signed a deal on Hudson Yards. I was curious to see how much it was. And it was 1.5 million square feet. They signed that in November. So here we are, months later, in August, they've signed 700,000 square feet. It's 2.2 million to almost 2.3 million square feet of real estate Facebook has just signed. That's a lot of people they're anticipating coming into New York City. That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's a crazy good is what I mean by that. But it's like,
Yeah.
whoever would have thought in this environment. So, that's good. To your point, the office is not dead. So what does that mean? And it basically means this is an article from The Guardian that basically says, okay, the office is not dead. We've had two stabs at trying to create what the office should be of the future in the past. And what did we do? We came up with one modular furniture system, and we came up with activity-based working. And this article sort of tears a little bit of both of them together, apart rather. So it takes each and actually sort of rips it apart. But actually, what's really important and what I took away from this was the very last sentence. And we've talked about it before, Mike. It's the human, right? Offices that are designed for the human, for the people, they're going to be operating there. And then they tie this back to the first one, Siemens, for humans to deliver outcomes. And then you integrate that with the work from home, but then the office. And how do you bring that entire ecosystem together? How do you make that work for you? And you do it thinking about the human, what they have to deliver, and and the various outcomes that is required. So I think it's a nice way to sort of weave red thread this all together. The red thread.
Oh, yeah, you brought the red thread in today. Every day we got to mention the red thread. We love the red thread. It just ties it all together. When I read an article like this, I'm always interested, and I like to see people's opinions and ideas. But whenever someone starts going back through the history of the workplace and go back to the 60s and they talk about modular furniture and they talk about activity-based working, and then heaven forbid they talk about the open office plan, it's usually, and especially in a mainstream publication, not one of our industry friends, experts talking about from a real knowledge, hands-on, understanding, practitioner type, basis, whether you're a workplace leader or a consultant who's really understands the space. Usually the mainstream media, whether it's The Guardian or New York Times or Wall Street Journal, it's a limited view of what the office is. They love to dangle that, failure of, for example, the open office idea or concept. And, you and I both know that it's usually failure in execution of these things, whether it's activity-based working or open offices or what have you. And they don't get to the fact that it's not just some, one size fits all concept that we've tried that, it doesn't work, let's move on. But here we are, clean slate, COVID-19, resets the baseline for organizations and rethinking and reimagining what the office can be. If anything, it plays into what the experts have been telling us, the Neil Ushers, the Andrew Mawsons, the people that you and I have talked to, had the privilege of hearing these brilliant thinkers kind of express about the real ways that organizations, workplaces can be created, developed, designed, and put together to meet the needs of human beings and bring out the best in all of us. And it's a holistic view. It's one it's not, cookie cutter. It's not based on some failed concept, because oftentimes those concepts are mismanaged, misused, misunderstood, miscommunicated. Change management experts will often talk about that, the fact that, communication is the key. What's in it for me? Why are we doing this? And anytime you hear people talk about in flat terms the failure of this, that, or the other, it's because usually it hasn't been executed properly or done with a misunderstanding of what the point is. So and again, I'm no expert. I don't pretend to be, but I've heard from enough of these people who have spent their entire lives researching and writing and pushing for these changes in our organizations to create better work environments and workplaces and holistic views of the human being and what it takes to bring the best forward. And I am optimistic that many of them will have an opportunity, at least here, to have their voices heard, and that leadership of organizations are going to be looking for ideas and interested in knowing the answers. And that's what I take from this article is it's a opportunity and a potential positive for the workplace going forward.
100%, and I think this nicely ties into what the article we covered with Vic from last week, and I know you've got him on your live stream tomorrow. So it basically takes, human-centered. You're designing for the individual that's going to be working there, and that's where it's really important lessons, and it's sort of, I hope that comes through in the undertone that we're talking about. We do believe the office. I certainly do anyway. The office has a big future, and but we have to design for the individuals who are going to work there, based on outcomes, like Siemens said, but human-centered, and I think that's going to be the future, man. That's going to be the future.
Yeah.
So
what questions do you have for Vic Bangia? Yeah, Vic Bangia of Verum Consulting, going to be talking about Workplace 2021 and getting ahead of the new reality. I love the headline of his article. Some of the things he talked about. We're gonna break it down for an hour. It's just Vic and me and Maddie who will be taking your questions, folks. So head over to workplaceinnovator.com. If you're not already registered for our weekly live stream, it's happening tomorrow at noon Eastern, every Wednesday at noon Eastern time. So Vic Bangia for the whole hour. We'll have a little fun. We've got poll questions. We've got a little, entertainment. We'll talk music, I'm sure. Vic's a big music guy, guitar player. Have you ever heard Vic play guitar?
I have not, no.
He's a lefty. He's a lefty guitar player. So, but do you have any questions you'd want to ask based on what you read on that article, or what would you be curious about getting more information on?
So, I mean, as I think about, what are the type of questions that I think people will have, and myself included. One is, so how do you identify what that human-centered workplace needs to look like, right? How do you get at that? Tactically, step by step, how do you do it? Whenever you get your results, how you then take that and roll that into a design.
I'm writing this down, Steve.
Okay.
I'm writing this down.
Okay, good. Well, or you can just rewatch the recording, man. It's fine. But whatever way you want to do it, man. Whatever works for you.
You're just looking for more clicks. You want me to click on this recording later? Come on, I got better things to do.
I don't blame you, man. I don't blame you. Yeah. So, how do you implement it? How do you then also understand the need for flexibility? Because the roles we do today are going to shift. What organization is going to do is going to shift. So how do you build in that flexibility? How do you best understand how workplace has been utilized in the sense of, we're going to go to this hybrid model. How do you best work that, educate leadership in how to maximize the returns on that? Because in essence, yes, we may allow people to work from home 2-3 days per week, but actually it has to be done. I mean, we go back to the Gallup studies and some of the other content we've talked about, teams need to be in the office together. So how do you design those spaces to allow different teams to come in at different days, but then the teams that need to be together, need to collaborate together, are in the office at the same time? That's no easy task. It's a challenge enough whenever you've got to put everybody into an office and sit them in a certain place, but then actually how do you do that when you got to create this hybrid model to bring the right people together at the right times, be it project-based, be it whatever. So I have a lot of
practical stuff. I love that. In fact, that's the shift in my weekly live stream and onto my podcast has become twofold. It's more about the long-term perspective and then the here and now and the practical ideas. What can we do to better execute on these plans and on these things we do know now? We know 5 months into this pandemic that we are going to be in this for quite a while, and we need to, lead our organizations and better serve the people and better kind of make up for the things lost in the in-person experience that we currently have. It's not forever, but for the time being, how can we be better leaders, better communicators, and better collaborators? So I love it. I'm going to ask Vic for his hands-on, step-by-step ideas, because he's a pretty brilliant consultant. He's a guy who has a lot of big clients who come to him and have for many years to not only map out their real estate strategy, but their corporate real estate and facility management, action plans. So he's got some hands-on experience with some pretty big companies that you'd want to hear about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then ask him about, so obviously the remote strategy or the remote policy. You can make it really simplistic like Siemens just did, or you can make it really involved. What's his guidance? How should people be thinking about that? Also, who should be doing that? Is that HR? Is that real estate? How does that
Yeah.
put together?
Who takes the lead?
Who takes the
That's
lead?
my question.
Policy probably comes from HR, but then the implementation of that is probably a hybrid between CIT and real estate. But then also, how do organizations think about collecting the data on? We think about the engagement surveys we talked about. We do these pulse surveys. How do you understand what's working better? Is it people in the office? Is it people from home? How do you start to collect it and think of that through? So, man, yeah, my head's just keep going. So
How do you measure it?
yeah.
All right, we're out of time, Steve.
All right, man.
Or
Look,
else
you
we go
cut
for
me
a whole
off.
hour.
You cut me
Go for
off,
a whole
man.
hour with
I
your
know.
questions.
I
Usually
know.
you're like, I don't know, I'll think about it. And now your brain starts flowing, and I love it. Good
This
stuff.
stuff, man. This stuff. I love it. I love it. I love it. All right. Thank you. If you listened all the way through, well done. If you shoot me an email, I'm going to give
Yeah.
you a prize for listening all the way through. I have no issue offering this because I know no one's going to listen to it. No one's going to send me an email. So anyway, so there we go.
Come on, prove him wrong, people. If you've gotten this far, if you're hearing this, send Steve an email. Get him to give you a prize. I want to know what the prize is.
Oh, so do
That's
I.
awesome.
So do I. But there we
You'll
go.
figure that
There
out
we go.
when the email
I'll
comes
figure
in.
that out if the email comes in. So if it's just one
All right.
person, it may be a big prize. If it's a whole bunch of people, who knows? But I'm pretty confident.
Do it.
All right,
Do it,
man.
folks.
All right. Have a great
Have a
day.
great day,
Cheers.
Steve.
Take care, mate. Bye.